back. It's Josh with the Financial Advisor Car Guy. Today I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about the difference between cost and price. A lot of the time those words are kind of synonymous when you're buying or selling a vehicle. But when you look at a vehicle as an investment, you need to look at those two things as very different topics. Now, when you're buying a used car, you go and pay the price. Whatever their asking price is, that's what you're paying for it. So if it's a $5,000 used car, a $10,000 used car, a $50,000 used car, that's the price, right? But is that your actual cost? Maybe, maybe not. If you're driving a car until it no longer runs, even then you're left with a chunk of metal that has a little bit of value to it. So I'd argue you're never going to deplete that price down to zero so that your cost equals price. But what will likely happen is you'll buy something for, let's say, $10,000. You'll use it until you no longer need to. And if you sell it for $3,000 or $4,000, your cost is $6,000 or $7,000 in that case. So I want to kind of run you through a few different scenarios where sometimes the cost can be zero. Sometimes the price might be really, really high, but the cost is very, very low. Other times, the price might be the cost. It just kind of varies car by car. So I had put together a spreadsheet that I wanted to run through with you guys, but I thought that'd be really boring for me just to sit here and read through a bunch of numbers. So I'm going to drop that. I'm just going to talk it out. And, of course, if you guys have questions or concerns, comment down below and I will be happy to answer those down there in the comments. But the first example I wanted to talk about is just a Ford Mustang. If you haven't learned yet, I'm a Mustang guy. If I were to go down to the local Ford dealer and buy a new Ford Mustang, right? Maybe not even a GT or a GT350 or 500, but just a base model Mustang. I'm looking at pretty close to $30,000, and that's the price, okay? So buying that car, driving it for a couple of years, I'm gonna depreciate it. And generally cars depreciate 25, 30, 35, 40% in the first 3 to 5 years or less. So if I buy that Mustang for $30,000 and I drive it for 5 years, let's say I'm making monthly payments, 60 months, right? At the end of that 5 years, my $30,000 car might be worth 15, might be worth 18, somewhere in that range, depending on desirability and options and the longevity of what it is. That's gonna vary. Now, if I shift gears a little bit and I say go buy a $100,000 Bmw M5, okay, the price is very, very high, $100,000. That's not a cheap car. And it's your run-of-the-mill four-door family sedan. Yeah, not so much, not run-of-the-mill. It's about the beefiest BMW you can buy that's got 4 doors. It is an all-wheel drive machine that, 0 to 60 in 3 seconds plus. It's just insane. If I had it my way, that would be my wife's daily driver. I would love an M5 in the garage. Very unlikely to happen anytime soon. But the MSRP starts at 100 grand. And if you get the technology package and the this, that, and the other package and cold weather, et cetera, you can run that car up to $130,000, $140,000 with options. After a couple of years, so I've been watching them. They came out in 18, this newest body style. 2018 was the newest body style, and they introduced all-wheel drive. It's the first time they've ever put all-wheel drive in an M5, and I love that. I think, here, that's my climate. I need it year-round. All-wheel drive is what I want. So, I've been watching the market for these M5s, and it took until about 2020, it took about 2 years for you to start seeing used ones under $100,000, even though MSRP was $100,000. Again, people weren't buying the base model. They were buying them and then speccing them out with $15,000 to $30,000 in options, and the options depreciated, if you will, right? So that $100,000 is still the price today on a car that's 2 or 3 years old. Just recently, I've started seeing 2018s in the $75,000 to $80,000 range. And I think the reason for that is because when the 21s came out, MSRP bumped up, option prices bumped up. There became more of a gap in last year's model, the 19s and then the 18s. So the 18s have kind of caught up to the depreciation that they weren't really experiencing. I would imagine that they're going to depreciate down to 60 to 70 grand, and then they're going to sort of plateau. They are a 4-door supercar. That's really what they are. They can keep up with Ferraris and Lamborghinis and McLarens and, you know, you name it. Those M5s are no joke. They are a real animal. And, you know, so they're going to hit that bottom of the depreciation curve and then, you know, maybe stay flat. I don't know that they'll appreciate, but the M series cars are always produced in fewer quantities. There's always that desirability and the rarity. And if they can't keep up with supply and demand, and that all-wheel drive, powerful four-door sedan is what people want, yeah, I could see them plateauing and then potentially appreciating a little bit. Let's take it one step further. Let's go to a Lamborghini. Okay, if I went to the Lamborghini dealer and I said, I want to buy a new Huracan, okay? It's a $200,000 car. MSRP is like 207, something like that. If I buy it today for $207,000, drive it for 5 years and sell it, I paid a pretty high price. The value in 4 or 5 years might be 160, 170, something like that. My cost was $30,000. 200 subtracting the 170 that I'm now selling it for 3 or 4 or 5 years later is $30,000. So that was my cost for that car. So the price was $200,000. The cost was $30,000. So I want to make sure you guys understand the difference between cost and price, right? Price is what you pay. Cost is the true dollars out of pocket when you take the price less your sale proceeds, if you will. So let's say I want to buy an Aventador, which is another Lamborghini. It's the level up from the Huracan. Okay, Aventadors run 400, 410, something like that. But they run clear up to the $600, $650, $700,000 range if you really spec them out with all the desirable and rare options. And they only make a few of those, right? A handful of those. There's not a ton of them out there. And you know, if you buy a $600,000 or $700,000 car, it may never depreciate below that $600,000 or $700,000 because it's one of so few. And if you take very desirable options from the factory, and even if you do some tasteful upgrades on your own, you add the carbon fiber and you add window tinting and you add, you know, performance wheels and tires, and maybe you lower it a little bit, whatever it is, right? Whatever your flavor. In all theory, you could get what you paid for it. And so your cost might be zero, right? You might be into the car. The price is very, very high at that $500,000, $600,000, $700,000. But if you sell it for the same, your cost was $0. So I want to give you an opportunity to give me the thumbs up. If you guys listen to that and you like it, you like what you're hearing, you like the idea of driving a supercar at zero cost, right? I'm not saying it's not going to cost you price-wise, but cost. Smash that like button, okay? Please, down below, hit that like button. Let me know that you're following and you're tracking and you're understanding what I'm talking about. Because I think this is one of the most exciting concepts when it comes to buying cars that is often overlooked. People do not realize that there is such a vast difference between price and cost. People walk into that car dealership, they see that sticker on the window, whether it's a used car or not, right? They're gonna see that sticker in the window, and it might say this car is $19,999. Great. It's not costing me $20,000. The price is $20,000. Please, please, please realize those are two very different things. So let's circle back. If we go back to that Mustang, I buy that car for $30,000, brand new off the showroom floor, and I drive it for 5 years. I'm gonna make my monthly payments, or if I paid cash, and in this case, let's say we pay cash for these cars because I don't wanna deal with interest, it finagles the numbers and all this garbage. So if I buy the car for $30,000, and in 5 years, it's worth 16, okay? It's lost almost half of its value. The cost of ownership was $14,000. And of course, that doesn't include maintenance, right? Oil changes, brake, tires, whatever, right? It doesn't include fuel. It doesn't include insurance. None of those extras. I'm just talking about the physical vehicle, this thing right here, from when I bought it to when I sell it, the cost, okay? So that Mustang maybe cost me $14,000. Not terrible, but it cost me $14,000, okay? So the price was low, cost moderate. Let's go to that BMW M5. Okay, higher price. See, I slipped up myself. Higher price, $100,000. If I drive that for 3, 4, 5 years, just like the Mustang, that 100 grand maybe it's $70,000 in 4 years, okay? So now my cost was $30,000. Price 100, cost 30, okay? Now let's jump over to the Lamborghini. Huracan. We'll do the Huracan first. Huracan MSRP $207,000. I'm gonna spec it a little bit differently. I want fancier things here and there. 220 grand, okay? That's what I'm paying for my Huracan. I'm gonna drive that thing for 5 years. Now, because it's a supercar, it may not be practical all the time, this, that, and the other. I might have to commute my kids to school and back and forth. It's not gonna get as many miles as my truck. So let's just say it's a low mileage use, yada, yada, yada. But to be consistent, I'm gonna drive it. So 4 or 5 years, that $220,000 car might be worth $190, okay? So just like the BMW, right? Just like the M5, the cost is about $30,000 to drive a $220,000 car with a huge price, right? That's a very expensive car, but it only cost me $30,000 to drive it for those 4 or 5 years. Not any different than the BMW that was less than half the price, okay? Now, last step, let's jump ahead to the Aventador, premium Lambo. And this car is gonna cost me $500,000, okay? I'm gonna buy it the way I want it. It's gonna have all the fancy bells and whistles. It's the right color, this, that, and the other. $500,000. In 5 years, that car might be worth $550,000 or $600,000 or $650,000. I could have actually gone the other way. So think about that for a minute, right? This is the most expensive priced car that I'm talking about here. It's not a Ford Mustang. It's not a BMW. It's not the cheap Lamborghini. This is the premium Lamborghini, right? This is a $500,000 car. That's as much as a home in a lot of places around this country, right? I mean, it's an expensive house in a lot of places. So $500,000 for a car that in 5 years may appreciate to $550,000 or $600,000. So let's look at the math there, right? It actually cost me negative dollars to own that car. If I can sell it for a profit, wow. Not much more to say about that. That's one example of how the rich get richer, okay? That's one of the things that's wrong. When we talk about the car industry, cars are just ridiculous. You know, there's always going to be those people that want that rare car for their collection or, you know, whatever the case may be. Some cars just appreciate right out of the gate. Others don't. Others depreciate and never appreciate. In the case of that Ford Mustang, right? It's a base model Mustang. We're just gonna buy it and drive it into the ground. It's gonna cost me $30,000 probably after I purchased it for $30,000, right? I'm just gonna drive it till it's worth nothing. That BMW M5, like I said, I don't know that it's ever going to appreciate, but it will likely stop depreciating. It'll probably, you know, dwindle down, you know, with maintenance and needs, and if there's dings and dents and those kind of things will hurt the value, but much beyond that, it's going to depreciate the first 4 or 5 years and then it's going to somewhat plateau. The Huracan, like I said, is going to depreciate from say 220 to 170, 180, 190, something like that. But then it's going to turn the corner there and start appreciating because again, those cars are made in limited quantities. Even the base model Lamborghinis go up in value over time. So the cost, if you hung onto that car for 10 years, might be $0. That car might depreciate and then appreciate. So that's what I'm experiencing in my Raptor, which is directly behind you right now. That Raptor, I paid $31,000 for it. Aside from oil changes and little bits of maintenance here and there, a few little modifications, just a few $100s worth of those, I could literally get every dollar out of this truck. It's insane. Right now, these trucks are going for more than they were last year, which is more than they were the year before. They have been on the rise. Appreciation. Appreciation's a real thing when it comes to certain models of car. So on my truck, I've driven it 2 years, 12,000 miles, and I can sell it for what I paid, if not more. My cost could be $0, okay? Pretty cool concept. Again, this is something that's often overlooked, very seldom considered. People just want what they want and they don't really care what it costs. They know the price. The price is what they get fixated on. And you know, in my hobby, when it comes to cars, I'm always looking at the bottom line. I want to make sure that I'm buying something that I can, if I'm going to use it, I can sell it for what I paid for it, or maybe more. If it's something that I'm fixing up just to flip, then it really matters. Then the price really matters, but the cost really matters more, because I need to make sure that on my way out, I can clear enough dollars to make my time worth it. When I'm buying a brand new car, very seldom have I really considered the overall cost. You know, my truck, I bought it because I wanted it. I don't plan to sell it. I'm grateful that it's appreciated, and I could sell it today for more than I paid if I needed to. But that's not the goal. I bought it because I love it. I wanted it. I've been wanting one. Our Audi R8s, I said this in a prior video, they're another really great example. They've depreciated all the way down. There was a time when you could find one for 50 grand. Right now, it's impossible. You very rarely can find one under 60 grand. And if it's under 60, it probably has a ton of miles, or maybe a salvage title, or whatever the case may be. But a good condition, low mileage example is very hard to find, and people want a ton of money for them. So, you know, and then we jump ahead back to my Huracan example, my $500,000 car going straight to 600,000, maybe 700,000. It's going to appreciate without ever depreciating. Or if it depreciates, it might only for the first year or two, but I'm not selling it that quick. I'm buying it. I'm not gonna pay $500,000 just to sell a car in a year that's worth 400 or 450, right? I'm not gonna take that kind of hit in 1 year. So I'm gonna hang on to it for a couple of years, and I'm gonna blow right through that depreciation curve. By the time I blink, it's worth more than I paid. So, you know, it's just an interesting example from a you know, a modest $30,000 Ford Mustang to a $500,000 Lamborghini. The price varies a ton, but the cost, you know, these higher end cars can end up costing you less money, and that's the moral of the story. You know, if I buy a $30,000 car, I might lose half of it in depreciation within the first 5 years. On the other end of that, these higher end cars, you know, we're talking 20 or 30% depreciation after 5 years, and that might be the bottom. They might go back the other way, depending on what it is and what's desirable about the car and what the market looks like. So that's basically the conversation I wanted to have with you guys today. I know it might be a foreign concept to a bunch of you. It may also be second nature. You might have just, the light bulb may have just gone on. And I'm glad, right? I think that that's something you ought to consider every time you walk into that used car lot. I think that if you can find a very good deal, right? So the price isn't super high. It isn't what they're asking. You get the price down. That helps your cost stay down, right? Directly correlated. If I can buy a $500,000 car for $400,000 and it's going to appreciate, my cost just grew, right? I mean, in a good way. Equity, I guess is what I mean. The equity is going to grow. So my cost is growing in a negative number. So instead of $50,000 of negative cost, right, of profit, now it might be 100 because I got a really good deal when I bought the car. So that's how I'm going to leave it. I love this concept. I really do think that I need to practice it a little bit more in my own life. If you guys have questions, like always, please comment down below. Occasionally I'll get an email. Thank you guys for that. Happy to walk you through these concepts on a more personalized level. If you've got a car in mind, reach out. Let me know what you're looking at. Let me know how I can help you. I would love nothing more than to help you run the numbers, figure out, you know, A, if you can afford it. What's your budget looking like? You know, can you afford a car payment? Do you need to pay cash? And then of course, you know, what's the depreciation look like? Is whatever you're looking at going to be worth much in the future, right? And so again, I want to have a very financial spin on a purchase like a car, because I think that these things can eat people alive. Depreciation's a real thing. If you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what you're looking for, you can overpay into something that's going to depreciate. Negative equity is terrible in a car. Insurance companies hate it, you know, all those things. So I would love nothing more than you guys to subscribe to my channel. Please share it with your friends, share it on your social media, follow me on Instagram. I love posting, I love gaining new followers, I love the engagement online. It's just so fascinating to me how the car community is spread in such a way that, you know, I love it, I love it. So I hope you all are taking good care of yourselves, and as always, may every investment you make be a good one. Until next time.